Welcome to First Alarm Family First. I'm Jen Herrera alongside Carolyn Acosta. The conversation does continue. We're not slowing down. We have another special guest with us today.
Today, we're so excited to have Monique Jimenez with us. She is a clinician and she's also a wife of a retired police officer. So she brings that unique perspective. She's lived the life of a first responder spouse while also being in the mental health field. Thank you, Monique, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Truly, I'm excited.
Yes. So, Monique, tell us a little bit about yourself, both your journey as a spouse and also working in clinician.
So, born and raised in Miami, so definitely a Miami girl. Been married to my husband for, 20 years now, together 21, almost 22 years. My husband retired in 2021, so he's living the retirement life, which is a big difference from, working. But I also have, so my dad was also a firefighter, a chief in Hialeah. So I grew up, you know, in the first responder family life, truly, since I was 1 year old. So it's really what I know fully on many different aspects between fire, police, and whatnot. We do have a stepson who is a city of Miami firefighter. So he went the route of my dad, which was cool. And no, definitely highs and lows, right? And seeing, my dad, watching my dad and stuff he went through and saw, and also my husband, which are two very different people. So I went into this field. Haven't been in this field that long, I'm going to be honest. My life definitely went different than expected growing up. So it wasn't until later when my kids, or I should say all our kids, my husband and I, which are six combined, grew older, so that it was more time for me to, pursue my degree. And I definitely knew I wanted to go into the mental health field. That was my passion always. Still in it, still pursuing a PhD. So still picking at it. But I think that it will help me, again, just to be a better clinician to help others. That's the most important.
I think we have a similar background, being that my father is retired fire and my husband is fire. So I get that, right? I get growing up with it and then marrying it and living it. And I love that you pointed out, and you have your stepson to include in this, but I love that you pointed out how different they are as individuals, because I think that's huge when we talk about mental health and the impact that being a first responder or any trauma, any exposure in life can have on somebody, because it's very individual based.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad is very quiet. And so the way that he dealt with stuff was he shut down. He internalized everything. And you never knew what was going on because he wouldn't talk. Whereas my husband is very talkative. From the get-go, we would talk about stuff. If there was something that was going on, we had our time where we knew, okay, let's go for a walk around our block, and we would talk equally on both sides. So he was very external, whereas my dad was very internal, which again, I had to learn the differences because I was so used to my dad being closed off and my husband not. Great, thank goodness, right? And I'm still picking at, my dad, still trying to talk about things and get him to open up. And he's 69 years old.
I get that.
So what did your husband ever come home and have a tough call and just not want to talk about it? Or was he always just open to talk?
He was honestly always open to talk. There were some cases like I had to understand that maybe in the moment he wasn't able to talk or wanting to talk because he was kind of just trying to de-escalate himself. And trying to talk himself down as far as that heightened feeling, when you get into situations where the adrenaline just skyrockets. But usually, if it wasn't the same day, it was definitely the same week that he would go into answering my questions. And I was always careful what I asked because again, I didn't want to overstep my bounds. But he usually always was very much open to talking about whatever's going on.
I'm curious how your stepson is. So we talk, because a lot of times, not always, right? It's not a blanket thing, but a lot of times it tends to be generational, right? So your dad, my dad, stereotypically aren't going to open up enough, as much just because of their age and when they came up, right?
Absolutely.
Your husband a little more open to it. My husband definitely a little more open to it. How's your stepson?
So he's been with the city, I'm going to probably butcher it, at least about 6 years, give or take. I mean, we have a lot of family gatherings. So, we have a big family and everyone's grown, we're grandparents now. So we do have family gatherings where we all get together and talk and joke and whatnot. And so I definitely always ask, and my husband definitely always asks, how you doing? How's everything? And He'll say certain things and disclose certain things, but he's pretty quiet, unlike my husband, which is interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Right, exactly. So I kind of, when when he doesn't want to talk. So what I always do is after everyone leaves, I will definitely tell my husband, you know, reach out to him. Or if it's just him and his dad, definitely we'll open up more and talk. So I'm like, hey, he's like, I know, I've noticed it too, and he'll reach out and have that one on one. And he definitely opens up more to his dad. I'm super happy.
Huge.
A therapist, is it hard to switch into that therapy mode? Is it? Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is with probably everyone, right? Especially though my dad and my husband. Not so much my stepson, because again, I just watch, right? I kind of analyze certain things that he says and whatnot, and I'll say certain stuff, depending on what he's bringing up. But definitely hard with my dad and my husband. To take off that hat of a clinician. I actually recently had a conversation with my dad. So my dad, they moved up to North Carolina, so a big difference from Miami, and he doesn't like it up there. They're actually wanting to move back down now, which I'm all for. But I will get into those conversations, and sometimes he's like, honey, I love you, but, this, that, the other, right? The excuses, so to speak, right? And I'll say, Dad, why don't you see a therapist? I just 2 weeks ago had this conversation with Dad. Why don't you see a therapist? It's okay. I know it's okay. I know. That's kind of like, that's the usual comment. I know. I just plant the seed, I just let him sometimes just talk and vent or whatever. I try not to be his therapist.
They call you out, right? I'm not a therapist, but just having had these conversations for the past year, when I try to get my dad to bend like this much, he's like, Jennifer, blah, 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 blah.
It is. It is. I mean, so years back when I started going back to school, and my dad and I made more of an emphasis. I wanted to spend more time with him one on one because growing up, I didn't get a lot of time with him because he was always working. If he wasn't, at the fire department, he worked one or two other jobs to, provide. So I didn't get a lot of time with him. So as an adult, I'm like, I want more time with you, Dad. Like I value that, in my 40s, I still value my dad. And so I made it a point that once a month we would go out to lunch, which he was all for. And so that's where I started kind of, chipping away and asking those really hard questions when, he was away from home environment you know, and we had some really good conversations. He was, and he would tell me, this is hard, honey. And I'm like, I know it's hard to answer these things, but it's needed.
Did
Uh,
it did it surprise you some of the stuff he shared during, or does it, I should say, surprise you during those lunches, like calls or experiences or emotions that you had no idea he went on, things that you had no idea he saw?
Yeah, absolutely. And even growing up, I mean, again, he didn't bring his work home. I mean, he didn't talk about it. But I do remember one incident when I was a teenager and he came home. He was supposed to be on shift and he came home and it was at nighttime around 9 o'clock. And my mom and my siblings were like, what are you doing home? And he just did not look okay. And so I remember him just going straight to the room. He looked pale. And I remember telling my mom, something happened, something's wrong. Go find out. And it was a really bad call that happened. And they sent the whole unit home because it was that bad and it had to do with a child. So, and he still didn't talk about it. It was almost like it didn't happen. And it wasn't until one of those lunch things that we talked about that I asked him, like, let's talk about that. Can you tell me like what happened? How did you feel? And yeah, that was one of the hard conversations.
Were there ever any like little things to keep life normal and fun in the family, despite of like how demanding this job can be?
So again, I'm going to give you two different perspectives. What I went through with my dad and then my husband. My dad, not really, unfortunately. For the most part, I think us as a family was on survival mode for the majority of the time. A lot of stuff going on in the family unit itself. And so, but with my husband, and that was something when I got with my husband, we got married with our children. I was like, no, don't want to do the same thing that my parents did, right? I want something different for me and my kids. And so with my husband, I will say that he really showed me how to do that, meaning have a successful career, but also a successful family life and marriage, because it's also that piece too. And I would say that he prioritized the family. I mean, he coached all our kids' sportings events. I mean, you talk about football, basketball, soccer, tennis, I mean, everything between the six of them. And he was there. He coached, he was involved. He unfortunately or fortunately, he never was one to take overtime. We made ends meet, we figured it out, because it was the family unit that really mattered the most. And so for that, I would say it really helped him, deal with anything that did go on within, the department or calls and stuff like that. He also, and he told me this because he was a detective the majority of his time in the field. And I always asked him, why didn't you go into this field or that field, right? For instance, sexual unit or robbery or any of those different. And he was always called. I mean, people were always like recruiting him. And he was like, because I know my boundaries. Like, I know that I will not be able to, be okay. And so I was like, wow, that's pretty huge, right? That's profound. Um, He's like, I know I'm good at this. I can help people. I'm great at that. And I can still maintain, me.
You brought something up that I think is worth talking about again, because I know that we've talked about it on the show before, how he didn't necessarily take overtime as often as he could have. And I think that's huge with police officers and with firefighters, that they're constantly chasing this dollar. They're constantly chasing it because they're going to get it back in retirement. Right. And listen, I'm not casting blame. Everybody's in a different financial situation. It can be one income household. We don't know everybody's situation, but I do think that's huge when it comes to the well-being of a lot of our first responders.
Absolutely. I mean, and I can attest again, going back to my dad, who, we were struggling financially, for the pretty much my entire upbringing, we were struggling. And so, yes, he had to, and in his eyes, right, be able to provide and a stable foundation, but at what cost too, and those were again those conversations that it's like I missed you. I didn't have you, I it was stuff that I wish I had you there because I was, truly honestly, closer to my dad than my mom. He was the loving one, nurturing one, which I didn't get, and it affected me. I truly did. Me and my siblings. And with my husband, for him, right from the get go, again, there was 6 kids, so it was a lot of, of children between the ages of 3 and 15 at the time. And so, and I was a stay at home mom for the first 2 years. So, we had to make it work. And that was the thing that at least we were on the same page that we will budget. We have to budget because we need to make sure that we can make ends meet, but also we're with each other 24/7, because kids are only kids for so long. And that was our motto.
Carolyn, I'm sorry. I just want to ask a quick little follow up here. And I don't know the exacts of your situation, but I just think overall, knowing like my dad and just a lot of first responder families, they think, right? They truly believe that they are being nurturing and loving and giving you everything you need by working all of those extra shifts and providing so that you can sleep in a bed at night, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not that it comes from this like distant place. It actually comes from a really good place most of the time.
Absolutely. Very
Yeah.
lovely place.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's a
And I
hard
think that's
line.
stressed out, burnt out. There's so many things that come along with that. It's like it's not all about the money, And I think a lot of them do. They want to provide for you and they want to be able to, give you all the things. But if they can't give you, like themselves to you, it's hard. So how open was either your husband or officers that you've ever worked with about talking about mental health?
So my husband was definitely always open. That was something that he always loved psychology, in the field of psychology. I tried to get him to go back to school too and get his degree. And I almost had him, and he was like, no, never mind. So we are very much a lot alike, which is, kind of great because we see eye to eye on almost, I would say a lot, almost everything. So for him, it was never hard to talk about mental health at all. Obviously, other than him, yes, my dad really helped, absolutely helped. With my stepson, I would say, he grew up with, his dad and I for the last 20 plus years. So I would say he has a pretty good idea about mental health, especially now. And again, when we get together, we talk about those kind of things. But I would say as a whole, typically, like the typical first responder, it's hard. I worked in a private practice when I first came out of my master's degree. And amazing enough, I got fed because of my background. A lot of clients that came to me that were fire, police, and military. And that's where I saw a big difference as far as, what things that we're talking about now. Even again, a lot of them that came to me, instead of going to psych services where it would have been free, they decided to use their insurance instead because of the stigma and being labeled.
Are you seeing numbers increasing? Have you seen more first responders starting to come forward, or has it been kind of the same since you started?
So now I changed, no, not that I changed professions, but I changed as far as the dynamics. So I work specifically only with juveniles right now, well, juvenile sex offenders throughout the state. So definitely a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, by far. I know. When I say that, people are like, what? Yes, not what I ever thought I'd be working with, but no, I'm very much needed. Uh, yeah. But I would say as a whole, with my, between my husband and his friend group, and my dad and his friend group, big difference. Dad and friend group don't talk about it still, really, truly. Older generations. My husband, for the most part, I'm hearing it and seeing it more. And I think places like what you all are doing here, Bleeding Blue, having conferences and stuff, really makes a difference. It is so needed. So needed.
How do you take care of your own mental health? I mean, what you're doing too, dealing with, the juvenile sex offender, all that stuff is a lot.
It is. And, for me, definitely I learned this obviously, kind of the hard way, kind of that burnout, like needing to make sure that I disconnect when I'm done. Again, my husband.
Yes.
How was the adjustment with retirement? How did he do? I mean, he sounds like he's pretty, with it when it comes to preparing for something like that, right? But was it still a little bit of a shock?
Yeah.
That's huge. I think being busy is really, really important. And whether subconsciously or consciously, he had those things lined up. I'm sure it made a big difference as far as the transition.
Yeah, it's different. And I think we've been talking about too, having, them preparing them like 5 years out, having them get ready for that transition of retirement. Cause it's life changing. It's like you go from go, go, go to like all of a sudden, like, what am I now? So it's a lot. Looking back, go ahead. I'm sorry. Just looking back, what are some things you wish every first responder spouse knew?
Did your dad react to your stepson wanting to be a
How do you build a support system when so much life is revolved around their job? Like, how would you?
I was just going to say, and you just hit the nail on the head, especially having grown up with it, like the two of us did. I don't think we know what we maybe need or want at times because that's our normal, right? But even through these conversations, I realized like, shit, I did that by myself. And no one has taken hurricane shutters down by themselves, with a baby in the house. Like I could guarantee 10 women, no one's done that. You know what I mean? But that was my normal, right? Like when there's a plumbing issue, like when there's all this stuff, that's our normal, right? When our spouses are home. It's like we deserve some credit, right?
Yeah.
Carolyn, you deserve like the most credit right now because the stuff that you've done the past year, I'm just in awe of
Yeah.
the stuff that you're on your.
Well, thank you so much, Monique. We really enjoyed talking to you today and for you sharing your story and opening up your heart to us today. It means a lot.
We appreciate you sharing your stories, especially personal stories. And so glad that we had this conversation. And because we can relate to them, we know that, and we know that others will too. We remind everybody who watches First Alarm Family First that if they see something, if something's out of character for your loved one, a friend, anybody, to sound the alarm.
Save a life.
See you next time, guys.